Hey all, Jean Moncrief here, and welcome to this week's edition of the Freedom Experience, a place where I share ideas and strategies and techniques that can help you to create a more valuable business, a business that brings you some joy and a place where you actually like going to work, and that when the time's right, you can sell for a premium. You know, after all, isn't that why we all set off on this entrepreneurial journey in the first place? So this week's question, and it comes in different forms. How do I go from owner-operator to being the CEO of the business? How do I go from a one-man show to owning a company with a team capable of running the business and so that it can thrive without me? How do I transition from an adolescent business to a mature business? Well, there's a really short answer to all of this, and that's to start with a plan. I can't tell you how many business owners, or how often, of all the hundreds of business owners that I've worked with and the entrepreneurs that I talk to almost daily, there are only a few who actually have a plan, who have a vision for where they're going with the business. Most owners I talk to have nothing written down, at least, nothing committed to paper, nothing concrete to work with at all. Sure, they got something in their heads, but you can't run a business without some kind of clear vision and plan for where that business is going. And I know many owners will run annual planning sessions, so something at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year, or in the time of crisis. But that's about where it ends. And that's why, at least in part, the business never moves from being this kind of troublesome adolescent to being that mature business, that company that can thrive without you and that you can ultimately sell at a premium. You're constantly struggling with questions like, how do I hire the right people? How do I create a team? High staff turnover. And it feels like the wheels are spinning all the time. So to make that transition from adolescent to mature company, you have to envision, plan, and articulate what you see in the future of both yourself, or at least to both yourself and to your team, to your employees. And this speaks to some of the most fundamental questions about how you grow, how you hire, and how you build value in your business. When I think about it, some of the best examples, and very often they're not the kind of companies I want to cite because they're so big, but when you think of Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Apple, Microsoft, IBM, they all went through the phases that most businesses go through. At least, those brands that I've mentioned, those that succeeded. Many more started but never actually got to where these organizations are. But they started with very different perspectives. And the companies like McDonald's and Coca-Cola and Apple and Microsoft and IBM started with a more mature mindset. They realized that they were building a company and they had the foresight to be able to see what the future looked like. So, when I talk of McDonald's, I only recently watched the next Netflix show, The Founder, which tells the story of this 52-year-old Ray Kroc, who's a milkshake inventor and salesperson, and he sees the opportunity with a couple of brothers to build what is now McDonald's. And if you haven't watched it, I encourage you to watch it. I'll put it into the show notes. But I absolutely love the scene where they're out on a basketball court or a tennis court or whatever it was, a playground, and they got chalk and they're kind of mapping out the process inside the restaurant. And one of them standing on the ladder, and they've got a stopwatch, and they want to see how quickly they can get these burgers through the process and out the door. And the end result is that he managed to get sort of pimply-faced teenagers making the perfect burgers in seconds, whose parents had absolutely no help of getting these kids to clean their bedrooms. Yeah, and believe me, I know. I have kids. So when asked, how do you create a restaurant business and become an overnight success at the age of 52? Ray Kroc said something along the lines of, it was an overnight success, all right, but 30 years is a long, long night. The thing in there is that Ray Kroc had a plan for 30 years. He could see, he had this vision of what he was creating. And he took that and he broke it down into the pieces that he needed to sort of turn into a reality. So every day he worked on turning that vision into a reality, and he knew that he was going to have to create the processes and hire the people. And without that vision, he probably wouldn't have been able to create what is today a multi-billion-dollar company. So a mature company starts very differently from all the rest. It's founded on the principle that, or building a business that works not because of you, the owner, but without you. So you're thinking about, what's this vision I've got, and how do I build a company that can operate entirely without me, not because I'm there all the time doing everything, and you've got to kind of create that vision, understand what that looks like before you can just start hiring and putting people in place. Otherwise, the business is always going to work because of you, and you're going to be stuck in it. And your founders of businesses that make it to that maturity have a very clear picture of what the company's going to look like when it's finally done. I once read of Thomas Watson, founder of IBM, saying something along the lines of, I had a very clear picture of what my company would look like when it was finally done. So my question to you, in answer to who do I hire or how do I turn this business into a business, a company with a high-performing team, go from owner-operator to CEO to owning a company that thrives without me, is, do you have a very clear picture of what your company will look like when it's finally done? And like most great entrepreneurs, Thomas Watson went out and he created a template for that vision. And then every single day he tried to model the company after that template. So have you got that vision, and have you started creating the template? That's the big point here. Without a written vision and a plan, you're going to forever struggle with questions like, how do I go from owner-operated or one-man show to being the CEO of a thriving company? How do I find the right people for my business? How do I go from a one-man business to having a team? You can phrase a question however you like it. Fundamentally, the starting point, number one, is envision it, create a plan, and articulate that to your team. So, I guess to come to sort of grips with formulating that plan takes time. You need to start by asking yourself questions, or changing the questions around and saying, okay, where do I want to be? When do I want to be there? How many people am I going to need? And what are they going to be doing, and how are they going to be doing it? How much capital will require? What training will they require? What technologies are we going to use? There's all sorts of questions like that. Where's the business located? How's it located? Obviously, we live in a completely different world now. And then there's some great tools for doing this. And I personally favorite EOS. I'll put it into the show notes, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. But if you can come to grips with these questions and formulate a plan, it's something that I dedicate an entire module to on my business exit formula training, and I spend significant time working on with my private clients. You want to come to grips with these questions and formulate that plan. And will your assumptions be right in that planning process? Will you make mistakes? Will you change your mind even? Sure, of course you will. But if you do it properly, you'll also have contingency plans in place. And you'll be flying by the seat of your pants sometimes. You'll be flying blind. Just take COVID as an example. So you've created this big plan. You've started employing people. You're working your plans, all going well. And all of a sudden you find yourself flying blind because the whole world's been turned upside down by something like COVID. You're still able to stay on course by having that vision, that North Star, knowing where you're going. A plan that you can articulate to this team that you've handpicked because you know where you're going. And your team, because they've been selected and handpicked to execute your plan, is really committed to your vision through good and bad. Now, I'm going to try and give you a more down-to-earth example. And here it is. In the coming decade, there's about 50 million baby boomers are going to retire. Like 12% of those, 12% of them own businesses, and they're going to exit one way or another. And the reason I put it that way is because only around 20% of businesses that go to market actually sell. Yet for most entrepreneurs, for most of us, this is our biggest asset. We've put decades of blood, sweat, tears, and even our relationships into our businesses. Yet the vast majority end up in that 80% with something that's worthless. So my big, hairy, audacious goal, my vision, is to become like the McDonald's of value creation consultancy, to help 1 million owner-operated businesses to go from worthless to elite members of that 20% club, the club that do sell, the club that are the true entrepreneurs. And I do this through this podcast, through my writing, through my Facebook Lives, my courses, my private client groups. I do it every day and I absolutely love it. My clients, sorry, that's my vision, my big, hairy, audacious goal. My target market or my ideal clients are people who want to own valuable businesses that can thrive without them, and that come time to exit, they can sell for a significant premium. And that's regardless of where they are along the entrepreneurial journey. If you're listening to this, you realize the importance of building a business that can run without you. And I have a 10-year plan to build that. I have a 10-year plan to build a valuable business that runs without me and that I can sell if I so desire. My plan works backwards from that vision to 3 years from now, to 12 months from now, to the next quarter. And it identifies the people I'll need now and in the future, whether they are contracted or permanent. But I have a very clear idea of who I'm going to need and the service or the things that my clients are going to need, the product that I'm building, how I differentiate my company. We used to think about this whole idea of differentiating, like your company is a product, and somebody's browsing through a store and sees your company or your as a product on a shelf, and what separates you from all those other products on the shelf? What makes somebody want to buy your company? In two ways: one, when you exit, and one when whatever you're selling. And that's become infinitely harder now because you're kind of on the internet, and there are literally millions of people offering marketing, restaurants, roofing contractors, whatever kind of business you're in, and they're all out there. So how do you make yourself different? And this is something that you really got to work on. And then the people. In my case, I want to recruit the best people I can to my cause. And I work at that plan every single day to get me to where I want to go. So even in a very small business, I have a very clear plan of where I want to go and what my big, hairy, audacious goal is in the future. So if you're struggling with these problems, I encourage you to start with a plan. If you're trying to figure out who to hire and how you're going to grow your business and how you're going from owner-operated to CEO, start with a plan, a picture of a well-defined vision of what your future looks like, and then work back to the present with the intention of altering the present to match your vision. Like I said earlier, I can't tell you how many entrepreneurs I speak to on a daily basis who just don't have a plan. Literally, there's a handful of people I've come across who've had some kind of written plan. And this is the fundamental starting point. If you create that plan and make sure that you exit that plan and that you're looking at that plan every single day. Unless you have that in place, you're constantly going to be struggling. Thank you very much for listening. Happy to answer any questions you have. And if you enjoyed this, please follow, subscribe, share it. If you need some help with anything, then head over to letsgrowyourbusinessvalue.com. That's letsgrowyourbusinessvalue.com.